So each of these photos and videos all have taken consent from the poor Iraqi patients that they were there. The views that I'm sharing are largely my own and does not belong to any organization. So first thing we're going to do is, before we get into details, the question will be, why did I even do something that crazy? Because my family was very, very worried. They were like, why are you doing this? You're settled in Mumbai, working as an assistant professor. Why are you doing this crazy thing? That I'm going to share in the form of a poem. Then I'm going to talk about 4 cases, but I think because we are late by 10 minutes, I may have to cut down to just 2 cases, challenging cases there. Then I'm going to talk about the geopolitics of Iraq at that point in 2019. And finally, about the cultural challenges that I faced as in the team, and actually what I enjoyed more than challenges, it'll be what I enjoyed. So let's start with the poem. Why did I even decide to go to Iraq and do a crazy thing? So I call that the big question. And I spent a lot of time thinking what made me do this. The poem I call The Partial Truth. Embarking to a war-torn land still full of hope, so cautiously I packed my bag and stethoscope. Then I was asked, why would you go to a treacherous land of fire and foe? While I tried genuinely to introspect, they mused along, curiously, yet circumspect. Ah, maybe he's a silent, selfless savior. Bravo to his very saintly behavior. Amidst that applause, my face shone, my honor grew. Yet I confessed that reason was but partially true. I go to seek answers, to fill a painful void, unbreak an ailing heart that felt it was toyed. I'd just broken up with my girlfriend a few months before this. A purpose much deeper in this mission I may find, while also leaving my petty sorrows behind. Few other reasons I have also found, I will be honest, as trivial as it may sound. I feel maybe it's just a frenzied millennial blue. We ever keep wanting something new to do. Maybe it's the travel bug that makes us tipsy. And then we can justify it by saying that we are a humanist gypsy. Maybe it's the ER, the promises it could belie. And we go in its pursuit for that adrenaline high. It begs to be said, just once again, I will rid the world of suffering and pain. But I must confess solemnly to you, that reason for my mission is only partially true. Okay, so that's what I had to first understand why I was going. It's not just because I wanted to help people. Of course, I wanted to help people, but there are so many other personal reasons, and some of them selfish even, for us to do what we call humanitarian work. Having said that, let's show you my hospital, so to speak. It wasn't really a hospital because all the hospitals were broken down by the war. This was just a metal tent organized by Doctors Without Borders. And inside that, we were practicing some bits of emergency medicine. So classic example, we know that when you have an acute exacerbation of asthma, this is a typical sort of prescription we give. Now, when you say salbutamol inhaler, we give them with a spacer. Now, I don't know if anybody wants to guess how much is the cost of a spacer in India. Anybody? The spacer, I don't know the latest cost, but I know it can be up to 500, 600 bucks. And using it in their currency, it was a lot more expensive. So we couldn't afford any of this. So what the nurses started doing, and I really thought it's cool, they made a spacer. This is from a normal saline bottle. They cut it, patient's nose shape and size. They put tape around it, and we make our own spacer. So this is what we had to do. And I thought it was very, very unique, very cool. When you don't have a resource, you come up with things like this to best help your patients. And of course, we rarely used a nebulizer. Now in India, many hospitals, we see anybody has a little bit of asthma, we straight away put a nebulizer. This is actually wrong. The evidence actually says that we use an inhaler or a nebulizer. Both are equally effective in mild to moderate asthma. Only in severe is when we want to think, do we really want to use a nebulizer? Obviously, there we had only one nebulizer machine. So most of the time, we manage patients with inhalers only. Now, similarly, in that vein, acute exacerbation of COPD, this lady now, she looks a lot more comfortable. When she came, she was very, very uncomfortable. She probably needed non-invasive ventilation. Obviously, in these kind of hospital, not even hospital, metal container settings, you're not going to get an NIV machine, a ventilator. We created this makeshift silly little device which uses the column of water as pressure to create some kind of positive pressure. I don't know how effective it was, but this has been proven uh, in multiple studies, even in India, in rural India, they use this kind of device to create some sort of positive pressure for neonates when they're transporting them from rural areas to a more advanced center. So we tried this out. We didn't have a choice. I don't know if it worked, but the patient survived. And yes, this has been clearly proven that it does work. I don't know if we got all the equipment right, but we nearly managed to get it 90% right. That's all you can do when you're in a war zone area. Not aim for corporate hospital type perfection, which anyway doesn't mean that patients will survive. The last one was this typical forearm fracture that we had to reduce. Obviously, they're not going to get operated because there is no orthopedic surgeon. There's probably one international NGO orthopedic surgeon for the entire city. So he will operate only, or she will operate only when it's absolutely essential. So we were made to reduce all of these in the emergency department. I was happy to do it, but when sometimes in larger hospitals in the UK or in India, these again corporate setups which have a lot of resource, we'll put oxygen mask and we'll connect lots of monitoring, and then we'll give some little ketamine, doing a lot of consent forms. We didn't have oxygen here. We didn't have masks. We didn't have oxygen tanks. All we had is oxygen container, which we had to save for patients who genuinely needed oxygen. Now, what I find very foolish is that why would you want to give oxygen to a patient whom you're giving ketamine? We know ketamine is a respiratory stimulant. It does not cause any respiratory depression. So they technically don't need oxygen. So this is just defensive practice that is practiced in the West and in lots of private hospitals across the developing world. So we didn't do that. We just gave ketamine to young patients. They were awake, rather dissociated. We reduced their fracture, put a slab, sent them home because we knew there is no option of surgery. Moving to the last penultimate segment, I was going to talk about MSF. This is their website. It's a lot of hard work to make an application here. You have to be really, really serious to want to go through all the steps. The interview process can be long and arduous and sometimes can take several months. Obviously, the paperwork is crazy. I was first made to take a visa of one place, then made to take a visa of another place just in case we are attacked by the terrorists. Then they have to take us to a nearby safe area. So that was Kurdistan and Iraq. They were fighting against each other at that civil war. And so I had actually 3 visas, including one for Switzerland, just in case both of these areas became unsafe. They were planning to fly me to. So I had 3 visas for. So this is all logistics which takes so much time and we never imagine. Finally, I reached Baghdad by flight. And from here, they took us by road. As you can see, there was an easier way to do this, but they chose a longer route only because it was severely unsafe. And they made me go through what's called the Kurdistan region so that I get a Kurdish visa also, just in case Iraq becomes unstable. So this was the sort of planning. Instead of going straight from Baghdad to Mosul, where I was supposed to work, they moved me to Erbil, which was the, so to speak, capital of the Kurdistan region, made me wait 2 days for an extra visa, and then shifted me to Mosul. So this is where I was, West Mosul. The Battle of Mosul was being fought by ISIS and the combined armies of sort of 2 regions of the same country with some foreign aid. This was one of the bridges that connected East to West Mosul, and our car had to go through this. There were 7 bridges, 6 of which were destroyed, and this was the 7th one, which was also nearly destroyed. Our car was moved through this, and we landed in what we call West Mosul. This is the massive sort of disaster left behind after most of the war. And you can see this is the building, this is the stadium which the then dictator Saddam Hussein was trying to build. Everything was destroyed. All houses, some of these are architecture sort of things that have stayed from the Mesopotamian times, and everything was destroyed. They're just average houses, not a single house that will not have bullet or missile marks. All of these are quite obviously damaged because of long range shooting and short range shooting. Now coming to my team, and this is the last segment. As you can see here, the person on the left, she looks like she's from Iraq, but no, she's a Canadian citizen and Canadian emergency consultant like me. Sorry, I'm an Indian consultant, but she's also a consultant. So both of us were in charge of this department, but she was made to dress like this only to blend in, so we don't have trouble with the local militants. And to the extreme left is this very nice, kind translator of ours who used to translate Arabic to English for both of us. And she's smiling quite a bit, but she has a horrific story. Just 4 months before we arrived, ISIS had come down and shot her brother in front of her mother because he refused to stop watching television. He was hiding and watching in the basement. They shot him and gave the bullet as a gift to the mother. And this girl has gone through that shock, but when we met her, she never looked like she had any of that. She's always smiling just the way she's doing this. It just shows when you're really pushed, your big problems also start becoming small problems. Just like the other way, when you have too much luxury, the small problems start becoming big problems. The reverse is what we noticed here. This is my team. As you can see, this is a steel container artificially built with some padding. It's built by a Japanese architect for us. And this was another one of the nurses there, and that was my personal translator, who was a big fan of Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh Khan. These are the two names that everybody in Iraq knows. Here are the two other doctors, and you won't believe this, a country that is going through so much stress, the doctors step up. The guy on the right is the university topper of Mosul. He's a dermatologist, but he will reduce a fracture like better than an orthopedician because they have to just do it. They can't say, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. And on the other side is actually an orthopedic consultant who's not able to operate, obviously, because there are no operation theaters remaining there. He will manage neonatal sepsis better than a pediatrician without saying a word. So this was the kind of attitude they had, and this was the kind of setup we had. And it was fantastic working with this group. For 2 weeks, I was sent near the Syrian border because they had no doctors. So there I met some Syrian people, obviously ethnically quite different. They're actually, before the ISIS came, they were at war with Iraq. But now they had to sort of become friends to fight off ISIS. And in their sort of hospital or clinic or whatever that was I was working in, very, very cheerful people. You won't believe the kind of clowning they do, as you can see here. This is what they were doing to keep young kids from crying. And this is fantastic, the spirit. Who would say that they're going through a war? Of course, because I am part of a not-for-profit in India. It's India's first NGO that looks after well-being of healthcare professionals and training them in soft skills. We are called CodeBlu, Healers for Healers Foundation. My personal interest has always been, after being burned out myself, to take care of the team. So every morning we used to teach the Iraqi doctors some Surya Namaskars. And they were actually very happy learning some yoga. They didn't know it was called Surya Namaskar. They just called it yoga. And we did this every morning as a team building exercise, but also a good way to start a sort of busy and hectic shift. I'll end with this last bit, the beautiful bit, my guest house. We lived in the governor's house because the governor ran away as soon as ISIS attacked, stole a lot of money from the government treasury. So the house was abandoned. We lived there. It's a multicultural team. One of them is a British pediatrician. Other one is an Australian midwife taking care of the deliveries. The last one is the Canadian emergency consultant you saw in the first. We had to some days cook our own food, and you can see there's a nice, beautiful dal there, which is not made by me. That is baked by the British pediatrician. Then there's dolma. The black stuff was actually made by me there. And we have to make food on certain days by ourselves and then enjoy the meal. That's what we did. This is just some friendly fights that we used to have in our kitchen. This is actually a Canadian nurse in charge of the hospital who was threatening me, if I make fun of her, she will kill me. So, and as I mentioned earlier, this is the Japanese architect who was designing all our steel containers. And as a gift, he gave me some matcha flavored Kit Kat. And of course, the last day, the man in white is me. They gifted me the traditional sheikh clothes or whatever, the Arabic clothes. And they had a party in our guest house. And in the middle of what would be described as a complete disaster, people had to keep their spirits up, and doing silly things like this actually helped. The farewell party was fantastic. I cannot lie that I ended up crying on that last day after spending 3 months. The fantastic group of people which opened my eyes about different cultures, living with them, but also working with a resilient group of Iraqi doctors, and my traditional thoughts about Middle Eastern people being very difficult, all of that disappeared. They were very, very sensible, intelligent, and kind people. Thank you very much. I'm going to end now because I have another meeting in 3 minutes. Any quick questions, thoughts? I'll take one question only, please.
Well, sir, I actually have a question about your mental health. Like, how can you manage all the stress from being in a war-torn area? Like, it would not be easy for anyone to be in that kind of environment. And of course, there would be no classical working hours. Like, it's not a 9 to 5 job. So, how did you manage?
Yeah, that's a good question. First thing is, that's two parts. Unfortunately, I have time only for the first part now. The mental well-being. This is a very well-trained organization, MSF, Doctors Without Borders. They're actually born out of United Nations. They're like a grandchild of United Nations. So what they have is proper strategies in place. They'll make sure that the house, before the doctors and nurses come, the houses are sort of kept in a very nice condition. There was guitars, there's board games, all of this to keep ourselves occupied. We obviously had trained psychologists with us to see if anything is going wrong. We also given breaks. Every 3 weeks for 2 days, they take you out of the war zone and send you on a 2-day picnic. And of course, they keep the mission very short. For emergency doctors, only 3 months. And after that, we get health insurance for about a month, where if we have ended up with some kind of a mental, let's say, backlog, all of that is taken care of. So it comes down largely to the team. The working environment is very, very kind and nice, and that we have a lot of admin staff to help us, so we can focus, and any stress can be easily told to them, and they make sure that all of that is taken care of. And if we are unable to handle the stress and we want to leave, they call the headquarters and they get us out of that territory. So that's how overall it's team and personal resilience, healthy ways, music, art, board games to keep us active, and camaraderie. So if that answers your question, I'm sorry, I will have to leave. I'll probably take one last question if anyone's got, or one last comment.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, I would like to ask, did you ever second?
Sorry, did I ever?
Sir, 1 second, sir. My signal wasn't good. Did you ever second guess your decision to go to Iraq before or during your stay there?
Oh, no. I think that's again a very intelligent question, because normally these things happen. Before going, in my mind, I was quite clear about why I'm going. I wrote down everything. I wrote down the pros, cons, and I had so many people had asked me, what if you die? What if this happens? What if that happens? I had answered that to them so many times that I was already prepared for everything. If somebody asked me, what if you die? I told them, there's a good chance, because I was working in Mumbai near the highway. Each day I cross that road, I feel that I will die. What about that? What if I just die that way? I'd rather die doing something really, really useful there. I'd spoken to my family. I told them this is a very safe organization. They have good international contacts. They have very high safety protocols. If push comes to shove, they'll get a chartered flight and get us out of the war zone if we are threatened. In my mind, I really wanted to do this, and I had made it very clear that the chances of something happening to me are small, but not impossible, but they're very small. And just that fear should not stop me from what I'm wanting to do. And I was quite right, to be honest. I never felt unsafe. There was just one explosion while I was there, which we could hear. The rest was all sort of taken care of. The army was in place. So I don't think I ever second guessed. Surprisingly, I'm quite an overthinker, but here I didn't. I was 100% sure of what I was doing, why I was doing, what I was going to gain, what I was going to lose. Everything was written on paper. My thoughts were down. So no deterring. Thank you very much. I may have to leave now. Wonderful talking to you all. I'll see you guys sometime later. Will that be okay? Is the admin team okay? I'll have to leave. The organizing. Okay. Yes, go on, please. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. This happens. Yeah. This is why you need clinical judgment. And if you're trained to just look at lab reports and CT scans for everything and not use your clinical judgment, you will suffer in a place like this. It happened to us when we had DKA patients and we didn't have venous blood gas. They said we're out of cartridges. The cartridge will come after 2 weeks because ISIS had blocked the route and it had to go through Turkey, and from Turkey, some side they were trying to bring. So 2 weeks delay, 2 weeks we managed DKAs without venous blood gas. By looking at the patient, high sugar, okay, must be DKA, fine. Start treating because they're breathing fast, maybe acidotic treatment, start treatment. The potassium you can't measure because the blood gas was not working. So you look at the ECG, oh, maybe hyperkalemia, let me start treating it. Oh no, this looks like on the ECG, maybe start treating it. That's all. We had to only guess and keep treating and take decisions, purely clinical judgment, because there was no blood gas to manage DKA. So yes, in fact, one other time, they said there is no x-rays for the next 2 weeks because they've run out of budget. So I saw an ankle fracture, which was looking like an undisplaced fracture clinically. They said, what's the use of x-ray? You think they will operate? You think this needs reduction? I said, no. And they said, why do you need an x-ray? Put him in a slab and send him. I said, that sounds like a good idea. We didn't x-ray the man. We just clinically said, yes, that is a fracture. What else can it be? We're not going to operate, not reduce. Put him in a slab, send him without an x-ray. So